Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Anni Reinking and I am the new Family Resource Specialist with StarNet Regions 1 and 3. And today I have Marybeth Cunningham, who is an LCPC and also has expertise in educational psychology. And she is going to be talking about how we as parents can start this remote learning, whatever learning is going to look like for your children, and how we can be scheduling our homes to feel maybe more successful or more confident than we might have in March. And the reason I invited Marybeth here is because she owns a counseling service, Kayam Counseling, and she works with children and parents who have exceptionalities, along with other categories of individuals, but she also has children in her home who have exceptionalities, and so she lives it real life as a parent. So Marybeth, thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be talking about two main questions. I first wanted to talk to Marybeth about some roadblocks or some barriers that she foresees for individuals or families who have IEPs, 504s, exceptionalities, different types of learning within their home, and then also how she's scheduling. So she is a very organized person with multiple things going on in her life, and so I wanted her just to talk about what might be some best practices as you're thinking about scheduling your home learning environment. So Marybeth, could you start with barriers and roadblocks?
Yeah, so barriers and roadblocks are obviously happening. They happen even when there isn't a pandemic and when we're in school. So we do know that with IEPs and 504s, as a child evolves, as a school evolves, things are going to change and there's going to be a roadblock and a speed hump and we're going to have to cross it over and be okay, right? With this, all of the IEPs for a traditional learner, even, with exceptionalities, they don't always carry over into the virtual setting, right? Because our days with an IEP or with a 504, our services are very tailored to the school day and what can happen during the school day. So one of the things that I myself as a parent and even as a professional had to wrap my head around when we were back in May, we were forced to be virtual because of health reasons. So we already knew, right? One of the things I had to wrap my head around is my children's plans are not going to be the same at all. They can't be the same if I'm going to be doing this from home as a home-based learner or as a virtual learner. So we are technically virtual learning right now, but there is a home-based learning thing too, and it's not going to look the same because the same professionals can't push in, and the amount of minutes isn't necessarily the same. So one of the options that I've been telling parents because of that roadblock is if you're getting things like speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, those are services to help your child within the school day to be able to be successful at school in the school day. And so one of the things that I'm trying to help empower parents to do is to know that you still have a right to those services, but it might look different from the school system, and that's okay because they might not be able to push in. And so if you have access to a primary care physician, I would be in contact with them. So first thing I did for one of my kids is I contacted his pediatrician and said, if we're not going to be in school, he's not going to be able to have speech therapy at school. And so if I'm going to do speech therapy, I want to make sure that it's done when we can do it and I can schedule with a professional. And so we have, we are on the waiting list, but we are going to be scheduled with our providers, speech therapists. And then every week I can say, this is the time that works best for us. So take that into your own hands right now is one of the things that I would say if they are services that are not specific to actual education. Does that make sense? I think there are pieces of the puzzle for IEPs and 504s that relate greatly to education. So for a student who has dyslexia, the reading interventions are going to have to happen more on a school-based setting. And you do still have the same rights as a parent, but it is going to look much, much different than your traditional IEP or 504 because it's virtual. So that said, one of the things I'm also telling people is exercise your right to question what you're eligible for versus what you're getting. Because if you're eligible for something on a distance platform or a virtual platform, then you are still entitled to it. I might not be eligible for speech on a distance platform, but I can go to my physician for that. So know that there is a difference between different types of cushion services for your kids. So that was a barrier that I knew ahead of time was going to happen, and so I got ahead of it. The other barrier is that you're going to have to really be on top of, if you are keeping the same IEP, you're going to have other things to juggle into your school day schedule. And so being able to be in constant contact with school administrators or psychologists or whatever, saying, well, technically he's scheduled from 9 to 3 for school stuff, and if you're not able to necessarily get in to pull him out, I have to do it, which is fine, but I need to be able to pull him for his physical therapy or his occupational therapy that their therapist is telling me to do. I need to know when in the day is appropriate to do that. So being able to make sure that your schedule aligns with their physical or emotional needs. You still can do those sensory breaks and things like that at home, but you need to make sure that, is it as needed, or is there a specific time to do it? When are you noticing your kid needs it? Because it's going to be different than it was at school, etc. Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing is a lot of advocating, is
Yeah.
addressing or knowing the barriers and blocks, and then also really advocating, reaching out to your group of people who help you with your children and really advocating for what's needed.
Yeah. And what you do is you get out your IEP or your 504, your child's IEP or 504. And if you don't have it, you just need to email your school administrator and say, I don't have a copy. Can you email me a copy? It's not official, but can I have a copy? They'll email it to you. And you're going to go through with all the, not the goals necessarily, well, the goals you'll go through too, but like the interventions that are on there, and say, is this really a thing that is possible to do virtually or is necessary to do virtually? If not, okay, cross it, highlight the ones that need to be modified, X the ones that, you know, that really don't pertain. So one of my kids that has an exceptionality is a neuroatypicality, and his is sensory processing disorder. In his school day, he gets sensory breaks. He gets modified seating. He gets, you know, if he needs to, he could go to take a sensory break outside of the classroom. He can have a fidget. I don't need that at home. Quite frankly, I can send him outside to scream and wiggle and yell for a 10-minute break and bring him right back, and it'll be okay. Whereas a kid who has something that is more stringent than that, we're going to have to figure out, okay, what could be modified? How can we modify it for an at-home learning thing? Yeah.
And do the IEPs need to be rewritten? Does there need to be a new meeting if you are going to be editing them for remote at-home learning?
So you can keep your physical IEP for physical school and then request to have a modified like learning virtual education plan. Technically, you don't have to have a new meeting if there are going to be changes. You just have to have an agreement, a mutual agreement between all parties on that team. And that might just be the teacher, the principal, and you, or whoever else. So you can do that in writing. You can do it on Zoom, as long as there's something in writing saying during virtual, these are going to be our services. So you don't have to go in and have a whole new meeting. And you can request what you think is going to be necessary. And quite frankly, there might be an administrator that's going to go, thank you, because I have 42 more kids to do and I don't know them all, you know? So yeah.
Right. Excellent. And so for the last question, and I know we only have 2 for this short video today, is how are you scheduling your at-home time? So you have 3 kids, and at least 2 of them have exceptionalities. All 3 of them?
2 have exceptionalities. One, and my third one is right at the door real fast. So this is one of the real life things we're going to be doing.
There you go.
So, example number 1.
There you go.
So that was my 5-year-old. She does not have an exceptionality, but she's got an exceptionally amazing spirited personality. So that's part of what I'll be factoring in. Okay, so the question you asked was, how am I going to schedule? How does that work with 3 kids?
And especially kids who have different learning styles.
Yeah, and my kids do. 2 of my kids, the 2 that have exceptionalities, are very opposite in almost every capacity, other than that they're adorable and nice, you know. One needs loud and big movements. The other needs still and focused. One is very rigid. One has not just the gray area, but the whole rainbow inside of that gray area. And so what I have decided to do personally, and I think it's important, if possible, a lot of people do not have this possibility, so I need to stress that, is to have technically a designated learning space. And for me, it's going to be our basement. We have we have the things set up. However, I'm not going to restrict them to that learning space, but my rule is going to be, because they're little still, they're young, my rule is going to be, if you need something different than what's provided down here, whether it's because of attention, or because it's too quiet or too loud, or because a 5-year-old likes to, come and chime in. What? Oh, then no, we can't do it. Go ahead and go in. So
Her 5-year-old accidentally got up at 3 a.m. today and is feeling the morning tiredness. So that's what we are experiencing right now, which I'm sure that we as parents can all empathize with. We have all had those young 5s who just decide that 3 a.m. is the time to get up, and then they try to function normally for the rest of the day.
Okay, so with that, yep, I'll be right with you in a little bit. You need to wait for just 2 more minutes. Go set the timer for 2 minutes, please.
Okay, but I want my robot.
I hear you, but I need you to set the timer for 2 minutes.
I can't because Alexa's not turning on.
Yep.
So I'm just going to keep going on this, and
everyone who watches this is a parent and understands.
well, and at least I'm not just someone pretending that I'm going through it too, because I am going through it too.
Right.
Yeah, so 3 in the morning is a fun one. So, okay, so a designated learning space, feel free to edit things, I don't care. A designated learning space, they're not forced to be there. But if things are too loud down there because I'm helping or whatever, then they are able to retreat into a more comfortable learning space. I'm making sure that they have more than one set of headphones each, and I'm going to put them at their desk or in their learning space or somewhere else. We know headphones break, and we're not going to be able to deal with that. Specifically with kids with exceptionalities, if they need those headphones, if they need those supplies, multiple each. And I know it gets expensive, but to be honest with you, it's worth the peace of mind. It's worth the lack of meltdown. And then to know that because they have different learning styles and they are unique to themselves, that again, that advocacy piece on scheduling is going to happen with the school. So if we are required to be there from 9:30 to 3, I'm going to be reaching out to the teacher. If it's a 3 in the morning kind of a day and that were my exceptional child, hey, they were up at 3 in the morning, they need to be able to rest. They're not learning anything right now. I'm giving them a break. But I'm setting that space and I'm setting up a schedule that they can follow. One of my kids will have a visual schedule, even though he's an avid reader. He needs to know what comes next. I'm the same way. Another one will have his own planner because he feels good checking off the checklist. Every day, I'm going to have a different list for them prepared based off of what their instructors are telling me that needs to be done. And I will have one of those pretend clocks that you can set the time on that doesn't really do anything other than teach telling time. I'll have that on our counter for my kid who's very rigid, so he knows what time he has to go until for specific tasks. So the other thing is, if you do have flexibility, if it's not online instruction, I'm going to allow them to order their own day. So meaning they still have to get math, science, reading, etc. done, but one of my kids needs to have some level of control because in this world, they don't have control right now. And so science might come first, math might come second, lunch might come third, and that might be helpful as well. So I don't know if I also have like multiple planners because I have to.
Right, definitely. And you have the benefit of working at night, so you're going to be home during the day. And I know that not all families have that that benefit. But with the visual schedules, with either a clock that does tell time, or with what many professional development providers and teachers use as a time timer. So the one that you set it and you can watch the red or the yellow go away or get bigger. And that's another way that you can do that. So Marybeth, I thank you so much for having this real life conversation with me today. Do you have any last thoughts for parents who are diving into really this uncharted territory?
I just have one more. Well, first, just be gracious with yourself. It's a year of their life, and I know for exceptional kids that's a really long year of their life, and it can mean a big deal, like a big difference between things. But there are things you are not going to get right. Don't expect to get them right. If you didn't go to school for this, if this isn't your, even if you did, it's your kid. It's different teaching your kid. Be nice to yourself. If you have other people helping you throughout the day, so my husband's with my kids on Mondays when I'm at work, do a family calendar that's digital, that sets a reminder, that sets an alarm for that person's phone so they know it's time to get on to this or it's time to do that. And try to set the appointments for your kids for the times where it's going to be you and not someone else, because you don't want them missing their appointment. So yeah, that's what I've got. And I do appreciate the graciousness that you gave me with my daughter.
Yes, we all understand. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.